Hello everybody, my name is Average Election Enjoyer today on July 17th of 2026. And yesterday, we received a historic primetime address from the President of the United States in regards to election integrity. Um, the four main points of it, of course, being the vulnerabilities in electronic voting and ballot counting systems, China's acquisition and exploitation of American voter data, Michigan voter registration investigation, and non-citizens on state voter rolls. Of course, this happened on July 16th of 2026 there. Um, First and foremost, I don't usually speak out on these more partisan issues. However, I don't see this issue as partisan at all. Um, I mean, if you're watching these videos, then why would you believe that our elections are rigged? Is just the first question I'd like to ask you. Um, because if you are actually watching these videos, that means you at least care about how, like, you care about candidates, you care about how candidates are doing and how elections are going and the sort of national environment. But if you believe that these elections are rigged, then why would you care about any of that? Because it's all just theater leading up to a rigged election. So, um, yeah, if you're watching these videos and you believe that our system is truly compromised, um, then I'd like you to try to reevaluate that because, I mean, there's no point in even watching this channel if you really think that this is all rigged. It's an insult to the thousands and tens of thousands of people who run our elections. It's an insult to both parties because it means that they're not capable. I mean, if it's rigged, then they're not capable of actually getting voters out and actually winning elections. So it's an insult to both parties. It's an insult to the voters because it means their votes don't actually matter when you know they do. It's just an all-around poisonous mentality um, that is overtaking the right of our country. Of course, I'm not going to say that there isn't election denialism on the left. If you look at 2016, there was a smattering. If you look at 2024, there were some angry people on Twitter, but nothing like this that you can see. Um, of course, um, if this is good. This speech focused mainly on 2020 and even 2018 um, elections. Which is unusual. Of course, this is the most common basic argument you'll hear against it is why would Democrats rig two of three elections against themselves? And I think that's, pretty a valid counter argument because it really doesn't make sense. The two elections that Democrats were actually in charge of running, they lost. Republicans, the one election they were in charge of running, they also lost. So I guess that actually, proves that these elections are probably um, pretty not rigged, I mean, pretty free and fair if the opposing party is presiding over their own defeat, three of three in the last presidential elections. Um, Same thing with 2018, 2022. 2018 was a blue wave in a Republican ran government, and 2022 was a red trickle in a Democrat run government. So, I mean, that's basically 5 of 5 of elections being ran by the counterparty. Um, that are showing their result against their party, um, which is just makes this whole um, argument and address and importance being placed upon trying to sow distrust in our elections. It makes it mute, in my opinion. But people can have different opinions on what they think. The first pillar, of course, vulnerabilities in electronic voting and ballot counting systems. There is never been evidence that there are uh, ways of voting in our electronic systems have ever been compromised. There's just no evidence for it. And these two paragraphs will actually prove my point here. Um, of course, they started out by saying Americans were blatantly lied about their security, and then they released reports that said that U.S. adversaries such as Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, and other non-state groups have the capacity to compromise U.S. election infrastructure, um, and that it is vulnerable to exploitation, and that systems can be used to disrupt that exploitation or election processes. So basically, they're saying that there's a potential that they could rig our elections, which is concerning. But I mean, if you're trying to claim that past elections are rigged, you should probably bring actual evidence instead of just stating that there's a potential that it could have happened or not could have happened. This isn't even saying that it did happen. This is just saying it could potentially happen in the future, which, doesn't really mean much to me, um, personally, because it's not actual evidence that it's rigged. It's just saying that it could be rigged in the future. Um, but I mean, come on, really? And then the second paragraph is just talking about how the Maduro wanted to rig their own country's election in 2020 in Venezuela, which is Venezuela. It means nothing to me as a U.S. citizen. With completely different voting systems, completely different country, completely different government, completely different like part of the world. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how this is also evidence that, you know, uh, there are problems with our electronic voting and ballot counting systems. So neither of these points really compel me, and I don't think would compel most people, um, for the points that I aforementioned in this pillar. Second pillar is China's acquisition and exploitation of American voter data. Um, over a period of years starting during 2020 election cycle, largest comprehensive election data in history. China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files, including names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data. Members of the deep state and our intelligence agencies. I have a problem with deep state because I mean it doesn't. That's another term that doesn't really mean much to me because it's just thrown around. It's just a buzzword, to me. Um, so whenever I see like just buzzwords like that thrown in, um, it doesn't exactly help the argument. Um, but anyways, U.S. spy agencies learning about the compromise of voter registration files in 2020. Tens of millions of voters' data in 18 states have been bought, stolen, or hacked by China. Yet those responsible for sounding the alarm kept the information hidden. Of course, this is WBAL-TV. It's a news article that talks about the speech. And of course, they talk about how these documents that you can get. I tried to open these documents, but they were in zip, and you have to go through a whole process of opening them. And um, of course, it was frustrating me, and I just didn't want to go through the process of downloading so much data and needing to go back and delete it all and whatnot. So, um, this is of course what he said. But PolitiFact found claims conflicts with an early announcement by U.S. intelligence agencies, where they warned that malicious actors could spread disinformation about voter registration data being hacked or leaked, but clarified that this information is publicly available or can be purchased. Of course, we live in this society today where a lot of your information is online and available for purchase, even if you do a good job in trying to keep that under check. That is just the nature of the world that we live in. Of course, not a fan, but of course, there's little that can be done about this. Um, Other than if people start passing laws and making actual change. But who knows when that's gonna happen? Um, but that is just going to be the problem with that. And of course, they said 220 million U.S. voter files. So names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data. So this is all stuff that would be, as this said, this would be purchased or found online. Um, so this, while concerning, uh, doesn't really surprise me. If you have TikTok, then I mean, come on, they probably already have all this stuff, and they don't even need to go and hack our systems to get it. Like that's just if you downloaded TikTok before there was like the merger and whatnot with the U.S. government, then you are especially cooked um, in regards to this. So I mean, if you have TikTok, then I wouldn't even worry about this because don't worry, your data is already gone. I'm joking, of course. Kind of. Next pillar, Michigan voter registration investigation. In 2020, Michigan State Police raided a Democrat Get Out the Vote organization in Muskegon, and they found that canvassers admitted the FBI agents they signed voter registration forms in other people's names, fraudulent registrations for people who do not exist, and received gift cards tied to the number of applications they produced. Um, of course, these are just voter registration forms, so there's no evidence that they actually um, voted, which is an important part to rigging an election. So that's one of the first problems I have with this. Of course, um, talking about how 28,000 non-citizens registered to vote in some states. Um, Department of Homeland Security notifying about non-citizens on voter rolls and ineligible voters immediately. Though some states do allow non-citizens to vote in local, not federal elections. Um, so that's probably that's gonna be a problem there. Yeah, this is also doesn't mean too much to me if I'm going to be completely honest because as I said, this is just registration forms. Of course, not saying that this is okay. If they committed crimes, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, which is what they are going to be doing. They're more alleging that the Biden campaign slow walked the investigation for years, but this doesn't really mean much to me in terms of 2020 being rigged for the aforementioned reasons that I just mentioned. Um, And then finally, non-citizens on state voter rolls. DHS review found 278,000 non-citizens who are registered to vote in federal elections. Real number is much higher since Democrats states refuse to share their voter files. Um, Now, these would be very concerning claims if they were like based in a lot more. I'm not saying that there's not a chance that this is true, but it's hard to believe. We have a very secure electoral system. Um, they make sure that your social security number matches up to ballots. They go through a whole bunch of processes to ensure that um, you know people who aren't citizens of the country aren't able to vote. Um, there's a whole process that goes into ensuring that you are a citizen that can vote. And whenever non-citizens do vote, I'm sure you see them. They do tend to get caught um, pretty quickly. Um, I'm sure you've seen cases of them getting caught here. This is by Fair Election Center. Voting by non-citizens is a non-issue. So we go down to election official reviews. Recent reviews of millions of state-level voter registration records by election officials. Exceedingly small inaccuracies observed in results of data matching in part due to stale data in those minuscule numbers are likely overstatements. So here we see it nationally. Um, the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, 46-page memorandum rejecting requests by Arizona, Georgia, and Kansas to add a DPOC requirement to a federal voter registration form, citing exceedingly small number of non-citizens who had illegally registered to vote, which was attributed to a level of human error that is nearly unavoidable in bureaucratic processes. So the point is that this doesn't happen, but this doesn't happen anywhere close to the rates it takes to actually change an election. Um, is the point that I'm going to be making here, and that this is going to be making. A 2024 review of Georgia found that only 20 non-citizens of the 8.2 million people were registered to vote in the state. And these are all Republican states here that they're mentioning. So I'm not sure how they could have gotten the 278,000 non-citizens. Given that this is one, two, three, four, five. This is seven of, the 20 something blue state or red states that there are 27, 28 red states, and most of them have smaller populations than these aforementioned states. So I'm not sure what's going on in like Wyoming. Um, but you know, consider giving that a lot of these Republican states are they don't have too many non-citizens in them. Regardless, I don't know how they got that number. In Idaho, Idaho Secretary of State discovered 36 potential non-citizens out of over 1 million registered voter, and they added that this is very, very, very limited. 0.010% in terms of this number. Louisiana of September 2025 identified 390 suspected non-citizen registrants across the 4-decade period evaluated. These are suspected non-citizen voters, meaning that not even voters who were found to have registered and cast a ballot illegally accounted for just 0.01% of nearly 2.9 million registered voters in Louisiana. And keep in mind that this is the highest rate that we have seen thus far out of the states that have been mentioned. Just 390 across the entire state, and these are suspected. In Arkansas, 240 potential non-citizen. Keep in mind that for Idaho, Louisiana, Arkansas, these are potential non-citizens, so these aren't even confirmed to have actually been citizens. And then this Arkansas number gets even better because 0.013 0.013. Holy cow! I just had a little stutter there. Only 30 to 40 of these 240 were ever believed to have actually voted in an election. So of the 240 they found, only only a sixth were actually voted in the election. And these are going to be states that are Republican ran, who would be incentivized to actually try to fill this number and make it, because of course this is Republican Party. Trump is a Republican. They'd be incentivized to, um, try to prop up what Trump is saying in the speech. In Tennessee, Secretary of State, only 42 potential non-citizens. 0.0001% of the 4.3 million registered voters there. In Montana, January 2026, 23 potential non-citizens representing 0.003 of the 762,959 people registered to vote in 2022. That is a small amount. In Texas, they found 2,724 potential non-citizens out of the state, 18 million registered voters. This would make the most sense because these states, if you know anything about Idaho or Arkansas or Louisiana, I mean, these Idaho, Arkansas, and Montana mostly, why their numbers of non-citizens be so low because it's kind of hard to get there. They're kind of in the not Arkansas, but Idaho and Montana especially are top of the country. Harder to find non-citizens there. They're majority white. But Texas is in fact a border state and a huge state where you do see a lot of you would see a lot of non-citizens, but they only found 2,724, and not just that. Subsequent recording revealed that the state failed to check whether those 2,724 voters had already provided proof of citizenship to the state, which means that this analyst revealed that more than 5% of these potential non-citizens were actual citizens. Which means, what would that be, like 30 of these people are actually citizens who should be able to vote, which is, concerning. But finally, nationally, 7 states with a total of about 35 million registered voters have publicly reported the results of running their voter rolls through the system. They have identified 4,200 4,200, about 0.01% registered voters as non-citizens. And this is 35 million 7 states. So these 7 states. So out of all of these states, all of these 7 states with 35 million registered voters, they identified 4,200 people as non-voters. So I'm not sure how they got up to this number. Hundreds of thousands of non-voters of citizens and dead people are listed and active. Again, no evidence that they actually voted, just that they exist on these voter rolls, which of course is concerning and should be taken care of, but it's more difficult than it sounds to purge people who passed, unfortunately, from these voting systems. There's never evidence that dead people are voting, and if they do, people tend to get caught and go to jail for it. Just look it up. There's been a lot of cases of people trying to do that, getting caught, going to jail. So there's no evidence that this sort of fraud is actually occurring. So to summarize, this is a nothing burger, and is actually, in fact, somewhat manipulative. This is a nothing burger. I mean, it's concerning, but I mean, as I said, a lot of this data is already leaked. If you have TikTok, then no way to complain about this. No reason for you to complain about this. Voter registration, of course, these people, if guilty, need to go to jail. But this isn't really great evidence for widespread voter fraud. This is just some people doing something illegal that didn't impact the election because they got caught, and then hopefully they get prosecuted for the full extent of the law. And this is also manipulative and concerning to see on the White House website. So, just to summarize, this is an actual speech that was made at prime time. That is, the intent was to misdirect people and to cast doubt upon our elections. While we have upcoming midterms that the party that is sort of pushing this message is likely to not do well in. I'm not saying you need to make any conclusions from that. I'm just laying that out about why it's, a bit concerning that we're seeing all this, push against our elections that have really never been questioned before and really shouldn't be, because, I mean, we've historically done a good job of not rigging our elections and continuing to keep that the case. So yeah, this is historic. This is concerning and a little disturbing. As someone who is in this election space, to see this sort of bullshit being pushed by our own government to cast out on the own elections that they are, in charge of. And I hope you look more into this. I hope that you don't just take my word for it. You do your own research. You do independent research. Yeah, and I hope that you also, are able to come to your own conclusions about this, using facts and evidence and research that you utilize yourself. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.